I smell fall. Fall is definitely in the air around here, and I am loving it. I am so enjoying this fall weather. It definitely makes me want to start just hunkering in and kind of nesting at home and just enjoying the, all the warm, cozy feels of being at home this time of year, lighting candles and crafting. We have got some really fun, amazing projects that we are going to work on today. I cannot wait to share these with y'all. Hello everyone, welcome back. It is so good to see all of you. If you are stopping by for the first time or new to my channel, welcome. I am so happy to have you here and it is great to meet you. I hope you enjoy your time here today. Alrighty friends, I'm looking forward to hanging out today. We're gonna spend some time in the studio working on a couple of really cool projects. I'm excited about these, so without further ado, I think we should just get right to it because that's what this is all about. So y'all, let's go craft. This first project that we are going to jump into today is, in my opinion, I think it's going to be super, super cool. It's definitely going to be different, but y'all know me. I like to do things that are just a little out of the ordinary and a little on the side of different. So we're going to be working with some fish bowls. We're going to turn them into pumpkins. This is going to be a lot of fun. So let's get started with project number 1. Okay, y'all, let's talk supplies. So we are going to be using these fish bowls. I have 2 different sizes here. I just thought it would be fun to make 2 pumpkins in different sizes. We're also going to need some jute or some really thick rope. You're going to need some fairy lights. I got these on Amazon, so I will link them. I'll have a whole supply list linked in the description box for y'all. You're going to need some greenery picks and some wired jute to make some little curlicues. And I just dug through my stash, just one of my pick stashes, and just pulled a whole bunch of stuff out. So we've got a lot to choose from here. And then I decided it would be really fun to add some wooden elements to this. So I cut a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes of leaves out on my X tool and one laser cutter. And if y'all are in the market for a laser cutter, I will have the one that we use listed in the description box for y'all with some details. You're also going to need some glue. I'm going to be using hot glue for this project. Okay, so let's just jump right in and get started. The first thing I want to do is stain all of my leaves. Now, of course, you personalize this to your liking. I thought it would be a lot of fun to stain these. It just gives it that fun fall, like turning brown leaves. Plus, I really like how the antiquing wax stains the wood so you get all this beautiful wood grain that shows through, and that wood grain just gives these a whole lot of detail. So I'm going to just go ahead and finish staining all of these. I just brush on fairly liberal amount, and then after I get both sides painted, I'm going to come back in with a clean dry cloth and wipe away all the excess. And and I am using Waverly antiquing wax for this stain. If y'all just happen to be crafting along with me, let's have a little race and see how fast we can stain all of these leaves. There are a whole bunch of them here. I didn't count them specifically, so I don't know the exact amount. I just know there is a lot. So let's race. Ready, set, go. Okay, so I might have cheated a little bit because I did get a head start. Not 100% fair if we were racing, but you know. Okay, so that took about 45 seconds, but not really. It took me about 30 minutes to actually stain all of those leaves, but they look so pretty. Like I said, I really love how the antiquing wax gives these that stained look, and look at all the really pretty grain that just comes through from the wood grain that peeks through. I love how it just adds a lot of texture and element to all of these leaves and makes them look a little tiny bit more realistic. I'm not 100% sure why y'all need to watch me actually sort all of these out, but it got left in, so we're going with it. Okay, now the next step is to clean our bowls. I want to make sure that these bowls are really, really clean so that our glue and all of our embellishments really stick well to this and have a good clean surface to adhere to. So I'm just using some Windex and a clean paper towel, and I do make sure that I get the outside and the inside really well cleaned. How fun to just watch me sit and clean my fish bowls. It's one of those tedious tasks that had to be done. So now we can move on to the fun part and start turning these glass fish bowls into pumpkins. Pumpkins? Pumpkins. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure out some jute, and I want to make sure that this jute wraps from the bottom of the bowl around the lip on the top. And then I added about an extra 4 inches because we are going to tie some knots in these and we're going to braid it. So I just wanted to make sure that I for sure was going to have a lot of jute, a lot of extra, so that I didn't come in short. I'd rather have too much than not enough. Okay, so I've got my first grouping of 3. So we're going to do 8 sections on the pumpkin, and each section is going to have 3 strands because we are going to braid these. So I tied a knot in the end, and then I'm just going to come in and just remeasure just to make sure that I do indeed have enough here. And then we'll just start braiding. And if you've never braided before, this is actually a very simple braid. It is just the process of weaving right side over the center, left side over the center, right side over the center, left side over the center, and you just keep alternating from right to left, placing each strand over your center string, and that will give you a very simple braid. And so that's what I'm going to do, is just continue braiding this, and then when I get to the end, I do tie another knot in the end just to make sure that my braid does not come unraveled. My first braid is done, and now we have 7 more to go. So for each braid, you do need 3 strands of string, and I did put 8 sections on this pumpkin, so pumpkin. So you'll need to cut 24 strings, or 24 strands in total. So I've gone ahead and just finished braiding all of these as fast as I possibly could. And now we can go ahead and start attaching all of our little sections to our fish bowl, or our glass pumpkin is what we're going to call it. So I'm going to go ahead and use hot glue to do this. You could use any kind of glue that you choose. I just like hot glue because it gives me that instant gratification. It's instantaneous, and I don't really have to wait for other glues to set up. So I'm going to start by placing my first strand, and I'm only going to glue the bottom. I'm going to glue across the bottom first, and then we'll flip it over and do the tops. So I'm place my first strand and then flip the bowl around and come directly across the first strand to place our second strand. And then I'll flip it again, place the other 2 directly across from one another until I have 4 strands. And then after I've got 4 strands, that's when you can kind of start sectioning off your pumpkin. And after you, I think the thing to remember here is to just place all of your sections directly across from one another to give us that nice uniform look. Now I have 6 of my sections glued on. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, 6 sections glued on. And here's where I kind of decided that we definitely needed that 8th section because, so I need to make 2 more, and because it just looked a little off balance. So here's how it looks with 8, and it looks so much better. So now we can go ahead and start attaching these to the, which would actually be the top of our fishbowl, but when this is done, this will become the bottom. That is a little confusing. Anyway, so I'm just going to do that same method. I'm just going to come in and start gluing all of them down. And I do wrap this just a tiny little bit over the edge just to give it a little extra hold. And then once we get all of these glued in, we will come in and trim off all of our excess strings or ropes or braids or however we want to call them. Something to keep in mind when you are gluing your strands down is to make sure that you do pull them fairly taut. You don't want a lot of play in these strands because you want them to sit really tightly up against the fishbowl. So I've got them all glued into place, and now I'm just going to come in and cut off all of our excess braids, the parts that we just don't need these, and I do try to cut them as close to the fishbowl as I possibly can. Okay, so this is how it's looking so far. I'm liking it. It's coming together. I love it when an idea starts to take shape and come together. So yes, it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and set the small one aside for a few minutes, and we're going to work on doing that exact same process to our bigger fishbowl. Only this time I am using some really thick rope to do this. I think on the bigger bowl, the thicker strands looks a lot better. So here they are, all both finished. Now we can go ahead and add our stems. So for the bigger fishbowl, I'm just going to add in a great big giant piece of rope. This is a big, huge 1-inch piece of rope that I had, and then to do the strands on the pumpkin, I actually just separated some sections of this rope. But for the stem, I thought it would be kind of neat to keep them all together and then just fray it out just a little bit here. I kind of liked that frayed look on this. After fiddling with the stem for a little while, I'm going to come in and start doing some embellishments, which is my favorite part of all projects. I love embellishing. So to start, I'm just going to add a little bit of moss all around this. Once I place it and figure out how I want it placed, I do come in and reinforce this with a little bit of hot glue. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the stem to the smaller one, and for this one I just used a single strand off that great big giant rope. It was just a spare piece that I cut off of our sections from the larger pumpkin, and this one I wanted to leave kind of long and let it just kind of curl on the end. And I'm going to do the same thing here, just add a little bit of moss to the top of this. This is going to be the base for all of our embellishments. Here is where we get to start having a ton of fun and just start taking a lot of creative liberties with this piece. So I have the moss down, and now I just want to start adding in a little bit of greenery. And sometimes when I am embellishing, I do tend to go a little overboard because I kind of feel like when you're embellishing, there are times when too much is really good, and then sometimes less is more. However, I feel like on these, I really do want this to be very full and have a lot of greenery and a lot of character on the top. So I added in just a few little greenery pieces, and then on top of that, so I'm just going to do things in layers. So on top of that greenery piece, I'm going to come in and add one of our cute little wooden leaves. And then I decide to add in a few bigger pieces. So I've added in some wispy pieces around the base, and then I will just kind of start building this up with some bigger pieces. and then finish it off with some smaller pieces. There's really no rhyme or reason to how I'm doing this. I just kind of wing it and I just start playing and have fun and enjoy the process and just get creative with this. Just do you when it comes to this part. One thing I will tell you is when I am adding all these little stems in, these little tiny ones, I do love my glue pot for these because you can just dip it and then stick it right into your project and you don't really have to mess too much with trying to be precise with the glue gun. So I will have that glue pot listed for y'all in the description box because if you don't have one, it's a big game changer in your crafty arsenal. Okay, so I'm just going to keep working on this, adding in some embellishments, adding in some pieces here and there. I did decide that I wanted 3 wooden leaves on the top of our little one. I like to do things in odd numbers, so 3s, 5s, 7s, and whatnot. And of course, we cannot have a pumpkin without some kind of curlicue, so this is where that wired jute comes in handy because I just wrapped it around a paintbrush to make a curlicue and then hot glued that into place. And then to finish this off, I'm going to add a couple of acorns, and I think that will complete the look of our very first one as far as our embellishments go. I'm feeling pretty good with how this looks until I flipped it around to the back. And then I realized, I don't know, does anyone else do this? I have a tendency to build everything so that there's a definitive front and a definitive back. So as I flipped it over, I thought, oh, the back of this looks a little bit bare. So I do come in and add just a few more touches of greenery to the back piece of this. Then we get to finish this off with the final touch, and that is adding some fairy lights to this project. So I got these fairy lights off of on Amazon, and I will link them in the description box for you. And to attach them to our glass pumpkin, I'm just using some command strips to do this, and I'm adding them to the very top underneath all of our embellishments so that they're a little more hidden in there and you don't really see the white battery box. And then I'll go ahead and just kind of push the fairy lights inside, kind of spread them out a little bit, and it's looking pretty good, but I feel like we need a little bit more light in here, so I added one more strand of fairy lights to our smaller bowl. I do feel like the decision to add an extra strand of fairy lights to the inside of this smaller pumpkin was a really good idea. It just added so much. This is what it looks like without the lights, and I do think it is lovely sitting here, but with the lights on, oh, it just makes this whole thing pop. The lights are definitely the star of the show here. I love how these turned out. I just think they are so sweet, and we will take a look at some more final looks of this at the end of this. But right now, I'm ready to get started with our second project. Lately, I have really been wanting to mess around with some modeling clay and try my hand at some sculpting. So these next couple of projects, we're going to be doing some sculpting with air dry clay. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I hope. I drew up a couple of sketches of what I wanted to sculpt, and I have a vision in my mind. So now the trick is going to be to see if we can get it from here to our hands and actually sculpt something that looks like something that's not a big blob. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get started with our sculpting project. I think this is gonna be fun. Let's go get our hands dirty and play with some clay. Are y'all ready to get your hands dirty with this project? We are gonna have so much fun. I am actually so excited to try this out. So I'm going to start with some air dry clay. Obviously, that's gonna be the main material and the main supply for this project. And I don't even remember what brand air dry clay I am using here. I will try to have it linked in the description box for y'all. But I think air dry clay is one of those things where you just kind of have to play with different ones and decide which one is your favorite and which one you like the best. So the very first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and knead a big giant ball of this together, because we are going to sculpt a small pumpkin for our very first piece. I mean, I thought a pumpkin would be a safe place to start since I've never done this before. And I was a little nervous at this point, wondering what have I gotten myself into, but I just forged ahead. A little tip and trick here is to keep your hands clean. Once you get a little bit of that dried clay on your hands, it makes the clay harder to work with. So definitely keep your hands clean. I washed my hands a billion times throughout this entire project. Okay, so simply started out with a round ball, and then I kind of smushed it down to make it a little bit flat, like just a cute little gourd pumpkin. Took my paintbrush to create a divot in the top for our stem. And here's where we start having fun and shaping this and making the pumpkin come to life. We're going to start drawing in the sections, and I'm just using my little wood scoring tool here and drawing some lines in the clay. And again, just like we did with our glass pumpkins, I'm making my lines directly across from one another, and I do 8 sections here. Our sections are all drawn in, and now we're going to go ahead and start sculpting them to make them look like very defined sections. And I am using some actual clay tools here. I'm not even sure how I managed to get these in my arsenal, but I had them, so decided to use them. But you could use a popsicle stick to do this, or a back of a spoon. You don't have to go out and buy any kind of special tools to do this, but since I had them, I decided to go ahead and use it. So to define these sections, I took this little tool here and sort of pushed the clay away on each side of our scored line. And that really does define the pumpkin section. And then to smooth everything out, I am just dipping my finger in a tiny little bit of water. You do not want to use too much water here, because if you get too much water in the clay, you could end up with a big mess on your hand. So just damp your finger, damp your little tool, and then just start sculpting and smoothing things out. This clay is very, very forgiving. So if you get a weird bump or drop your tool, no worries. This is literally one of those projects where you just trust the process and you just start having fun, and just learn as you go. So if you try it once and it doesn't work, like I said, this clay is very forgiving, and so you could literally just ball it back up and start all over. It does not dry fast. This does not have a fast dry time, so you have a lot of working time to do this. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue creating my sections and defining my sections with this little tool. Like I said, you could use a popsicle stick to do this, you could use your finger to do this, or even the smooth end of a paintbrush. One thing that I did learn in this entire process is you do want to be gentle. You don't want to press really hard. You don't want to push really hard. It really does take a very gentle hand to define all of this and to sculpt this clay into the shape that you want. All right, y'all. So we have successfully sculpted our first little pumpkin, and I think it is darling. So now we need to go ahead and make a stem for this. So I just took a small piece of the clay, rolled it into a ball, and then put it on my mat and just kind of kneaded it back and forth until we got kind of like a big rope type strand. And for this particular pumpkin, I thought it would be a lot of fun to make a super curly stem. Like when you see a real pumpkin, they've got very curly stems on them. So that's what I'm going to do. I've rolled it all out, cut off my excess ends to give me a nice smooth end, and then I just start rolling this in and giving it that cute little curly Q shape. After I got the little curlicue on the end, I do kind of bend my stem a little bit, but I wanted the little curlicue to sort of touch the inside of the stem. And I also wanted to have a little tiny space above that. So you can kind of see how I bent it over. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach these. And to attach air dry clay, or any kind of clay actually, but to attach the air dry clay to one another, you want to make some little scoring marks. That's what helps it stick to each other really well. And then I did come in and kind of smooth out those scoring marks with a tiny bit of water on my finger. And I also used just a little tiny bit of water to sort of smooth out this stem. And then I thought, well, I don't know why I did all of that, because I actually want this stem to have some texture to it. So I came in with my little scory tool and just drew a little bit, or just kind of gently scored some texture into this. And now I'm just sort of smoothing it all out. And then this stem is done and we can set it aside to dry. Okay, y'all, so I did go ahead and sculpt a couple different pumpkins, and now I am feeling super ambitious and want to try something a little bit more complicated, just kind of bring things up, step things up a notch. So I'm going to try and sculpt a gourd here, and I honestly have no idea what I am doing. I literally am just winging this. I am flying off the cuff with this project. So I start out with a really big round ball and then kind of press it out, but I don't press it too far because I do want this to be about 1.5 inches thick. Actually, I want a pretty good amount of thickness to this. This is going to be the base of my gourd, and then we're just going to start building on top of this to create the shape. So I fiddle with this for a little bit, and then I'm going to come in and add another ball to the top of this. So you can see here how I've kind of made this about 1.5 inches. It's actually pretty close to 2 inches. So here I'm bringing in another ball. I've smoothed it all out, kind of shaped it into a round ball, and I'm going to attach it to our bottom piece, the base piece. And to do this, again, you want to score both pieces. Scoring this is very, very, very important because this is what helps everything stick together. Once it's scored, I do add just a tiny little bit of water to each section. And then we will go ahead and place this right on top. And then to make this form into our base, we're going to you can use a popsicle stick or a back of the spoon, or like I'm doing here, I'm just using this little tool to do, and you kind of just start pressing some clay from the top section down into the bottom section. Once we've done that all the way around, we're going to wet our fingers and kind of take our fingers and just rub around this to create a smooth melding. Sorry about my big head there. We're just going to start melding these pieces together. And again, this clay is very, very forgiving, and getting your fingers just a little bit wet helps mold the clay and shape the clay. So again, I'm just going to come around with a little bit of water on my fingers and start melding this top ball to our base shape. And don't drop it like I just did. Well, this certainly does not look like a gourd, but here's where, again, I know I've said this quite a bit today, but again, this is where we just trust the process. Okay, so to add a little bit more shape with this, I'm going to roll out just like a rope shape in my clay, and then we are going to attach this around the base of this, where our round ball and our base meet each other. And we're to meld these together. I'm going to do that same process where I score our little rope really, really well all the way across, and then I will come in and score around the neck of our gourd piece, our base piece as well, so that these two can be really well welded together. All right, let's attach our little rope piece here, and then once it's attached, to meld them all together or weld them all together, we're going to do that same process where we push some of the clay from the top of our rope into the top section of that ball, and then some of the clay from the bottom of the rope into the base part, that first base that we started with. And this is just a gentle process. It looks like I'm not being super careful here, but I honestly really am. I am just being very gentle with this and working it the best I can. Okay, so once we've done that, I'm going to wet my fingers again, but just ever so slightly. You do not want to use too much water because it will turn the clay to absolute mush. So now I'm just going to start shaping this, and slowly but surely this starts to look a little bit more like a gourd. It's starting to take on that gourd shape, and this is the part where you have to be kind of patient and you just have to take your time, work the piece, keep shaping it, keep, just playing with it and having fun. And again, sorry for my big head in the way. I was really getting into this and concentrating pretty hard as I was working on this. So, all right, so we're just going to keep shaping. We're going to keep molding. We're going to keep pushing clay around until we get somewhat of a gourd shape, the best gourd shape that I could possibly get for being an absolute beginner at this. It may not be perfect, but I'm going to go ahead and go with it. It looks pretty good. It's not bad for a beginner attempt. So I'm going to go ahead and again just create a divot in the top of this. You can just use the bottom of your spoon, the bottom of a paintbrush, anything you need to just create a divot, because this is where our stem is going to rest. And then just like with our little mini pumpkin, we're going to come in and start scoring this. However, the big difference with this piece is I'm not super uniform with it. I want my little sections to be very asymmetrical and just kind of wonky and very natural looking. I did actually have a little tiny gourd that I was using to kind of shape this from. And as I was looking at it, I was thinking, okay, this isn't super uniform. So just create a whole bunch of sections in this until it looks the way you want it to look, until you feel like it's looking really good. And then just like with our little pumpkin, we're going to come in and kind of start defining all of the sections by pushing some of that clay back on either side of our score line. And then we'll come back in with a slightly damp finger to just smooth everything out. Now with this piece, I do want quite a bit of texture with these cute little gourds. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time smoothing the clay out, because at the end we are actually going to add a whole bunch of texture to this. And to add the texture, I just take my paintbrush, a stippling paintbrush, and just kind of start gently dabbing all around to create some texture in this piece. With all of our sections made into our little gourd, it's time to go ahead and shape a stem. And again, I'm just rolling this out to kind of shape into like a little rope. And then for this one, I wanted to twist it. So I just start gently twisting my clay until it creates just that cute little twist in our rope. And then I'm going to score the end of it, score that top divot section of my pumpkin, and I'm going to go ahead and wet it a tiny little bit and place it in the pumpkin. And as I place it in, I give it a little bit more twist because I really want that stem to have quite a bit of twist to it. And then I will just cut off any excess, cut it to the desired length here, and then just spend a little time reshaping it and redefining some of that twist. And I did, okay, this is so cute. I love how this turned out. I'm actually quite impressed with myself at this point. Especially because this is literally a new craft for me. I have never tried to sculpt anything a day in my life before. So I'm kind of feeling a little bit proud that I pulled this off. Okay, so I did leave the stem inside of the gourds to dry, but as they started to dry, the stems shrink a little bit, because that is something to keep in mind with this air dry clay, as it does shrink as it's drying. And so the stems are sitting there, but I will have to come back in and glue them. Okay, One last little piece, we're going to go through this super, super quick. I decided I really wanted to build a little bit taller of a pumpkin. So to do this, I just start with 2 rounds, combine the 2 rounds together, again, create the little rope that's going to go around the 2, and meld everything together just like we did with our gourds. Something to keep in mind when working with air dry clay, this is just something I kind of learned. I mean, again, I am a very beginner at this, so I don't have a lot of advice, but I did notice that when working with the sculpting, it's best to work in small little shapes. Just create small little shapes, combine them together to meld together to create your overall shape. So that's how I created this. I just started with 2 round balls, put them together, and then just started building on this to create a taller pumpkin piece. And then I will come in, draw the same sections in, exactly the same as we've been doing every other piece, and just keep working it and playing with it until I have that tall, skinny pumpkin shape. Okay, so it's looking pretty good right now. I've played with this, I feel like, enough, and I've done all the smoothing out. And so now I'm going to go ahead and just create the little divot for our stem and start making all of our sections in the pumpkin. I do end up loving this one. This one might actually be my favorite little pumpkin. It turns out super, super cute. For the stem on this one, I thought it would be fun to kind of create a braided stem. So I just rolled out some clay into some really thin little ropes, and then I will braid them together, very similar to the sections that we made on one of our glass pumpkins. So I'm just going to go ahead and braid this really, really quickly. And I just do a few braids in this. I mean, I don't need a super big stem here, so I just braid down a little bit, and then I will cut off all of my excess pieces to get this to the proper length. And then to attach it to the pumpkin, I'm just going to kind of twist it in there and then meld it together a little bit with just a slightly damp finger. And then I did curve it over a little just to give it a cute little curved look. And y'all, I am loving all of the pieces. These are all the pieces that I sculpted today. I think they are so much fun. I do feel quite proud of myself considering this is the first time I have ever done this. So now we just get to sit and let everything dry. And because we used a lot of clay, these are quite dense pieces, it's going to take 5 to 7 days for these to completely dry. So we won't get to finish them today, but next week we'll get to paint them and finish them all off, and they're going to be so cute. Something to keep in mind is as you're drying this, you want to turn these frequently so that all the sides and everything can dry evenly and thoroughly. So here I've just sort of started turning all of the pieces so that the fronts, the tops, the backs, and the sides can all dry evenly. I had a blast working on all of these projects with y'all today. These were so much fun. I am sad that we didn't get our modeling clay pieces finished in this episode, but we are going to finish them up next week. They're still drying because we used a lot of very dense clay in these projects when we were sculpting. It's going to take them a while to dry, but they will be ready for next week so we can paint them and I can set them out, and I'm really, really excited. Y'all, what do you think of our really cool glass pumpkins? Oh my gosh, I am absolutely loving these. They turned out so much better than I thought they were. And you know, this is one of those true testaments to trust the process, because as I was working on them, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know if these are gonna, if my vision for these is gonna, you know, work out, but they did. And I just think they are so darling. They're gonna be so much fun to have out through the fall season. Y'all, let me know which of these two projects was your favorite. Of course, one of them's not all the way finished yet, but let me know what you think of these projects from today. And I really hope that y'all will give these a try, that I've inspired you and given you some fun ideas for your crafty fall home decor. Alrighty friends, well, I guess that is going to wrap things up for today. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed working on these projects. I cannot wait to finish our modeling clay pieces that we sculpted. I cannot wait to finish those next week. And we're also going to jump into a really fun sewing project. So y'all come back and see me again next week. Until then, take care, and I will see y'all soon. Bye. Okay, never mind. Take two. Hello everyone, welcome back. It is so good to see all of you. Blah, 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 blah. Let's try that again. Okay, I think I've got words. And poof, it's all gone. Ma, 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 ma. Uh-huh. No. That's not how that goes. I guess we're just gonna have a whole blooper reel today. This whole thing's just gonna be bloopers. Well, I guess that's a wrap. See y'all next week. Until then, be happy, be kind, and stay creative.